I read the bank's warning email over and over, my heart pounding. $250,000 vanished from my father's trust fund, and the signature on the withdrawal slip was my name. I hadn't signed anything. I wasn't even in the city when the transaction happened. But someone had impersonated me, and who else but those closest to me could have pulled it off? I rushed straight home from the airport. The library door was slightly ajar, and in the warm glow of the desk lamp I saw Derek, my husband, leaning over signing papers. Sitting across from him was Madison, my stepsister, draped in a black dress as if she were about to take over the entire family. A stranger of a lawyer quietly slid the documents toward them. Derek looked up, not the least bit surprised. Instead, he was calm, almost dismissive. "You got back in time, Arabella. Don't worry, this is procedure. That trust was never really yours." I froze, shoes still dusted from the road, luggage untouched in my hand. For a split second I felt like an intruder in my own house. But instead of screaming, I pressed my lips together. My eyes turned cold. They thought I would crumble. But they didn't know. The game had only just begun. I had learned to live with emptiness since I was very young. My mother died when I was only 8, leaving me memories of afternoons when she painted in a sunlit room, the smell of paint in the air and soft classical music playing from an old radio. She had planted in me a love for art, and she had kept our small home warm with her presence. When she was gone, my world shifted to another shade, darker, emptier, filled with silences no one could cover. My father was a well-known art collector, and I always thought he had a rare gift for finding value in what others overlooked. An unknown painter's canvas, a century-old wooden chair most would call outdated. After my mother's death, he buried himself in work, perhaps to escape grief. But to me, he remained a gentle, patient father, teaching me how to sit before a painting and let it tell its story. 2 years later, my father met Evelyn. I still remember how she swept into our quiet home like a gust of fresh wind. To me, she seemed radiant, charming, always smiling as if she wanted to light up every room she entered. She brought her daughter, Madison, a year younger than me, with golden curls and sparkling blue eyes. Evelyn called her Little Princess, and I quickly realized it wasn't only a mother's endearment, it was the way she wanted the world to see Madison. From the start, the contrast was obvious. I stayed in my old bedroom, surrounded by my mother's bookshelves, while Madison's room was transformed into a miniature castle. Pink lace curtains, a canopy bed draped in white netting, and a wardrobe bursting with new dresses. I told myself I wasn't jealous, but lying awake at night, hearing Madison's giggles and Evelyn's doting voice, I knew the balance of the house had shifted. My father wasn't blind, though. He still placed absolute trust in me, something no one else could touch. One evening in the library, he handed me a small brass key, old but sturdy. "Arabella," he said, his voice unusually serious, "this is the key to the safe. Inside are important documents and my personal journals. Keep it. I want you to guard your mother's memory and everything I've built." My small hands trembled as I took it. I knew he had chosen me, and I silently vowed never to let him down. Madison noticed right away. She kept asking me why I was allowed in the library, why father had private talks with me, why I was the one who could touch his old journals. At first, her eyes held curiosity. But soon something darker flickered there: envy. I'll never forget the first time Madison tried to steal what was mine. It was in 5th grade when I spent weeks painting a still life for the school art contest, a set of ceramic vases my mother had once loved. I carefully mixed each color, chasing the light my mother had taught me to see. On submission day, the painting was gone. I found it in Madison's room, her clumsy handwriting scrawled in the corner as if it were her own. "Madison," I shouted, yanking it back. "This is mine." She crossed her arms, eyes watery but her tone defiant. "So what if it's yours? Mom said anyone can paint if they're brave enough." I wanted to try. Evelyn rushed in at the noise, immediately wrapping Madison in her arms. "Sweetheart, are you okay? Arabella, what are you doing to her? It's only a painting, don't be so selfish." That day I understood, whatever Madison did, Evelyn would twist it into my fault. My father knew, but instead of scolding me, he gently laid a hand on my shoulder. "Don't let anyone make you doubt your worth, Arabella. You have real talent. Others may copy, but they can never replace you." I nodded, but a deep crack had already formed inside me. The same pattern repeated over the years. If I earned an A, Madison complained the teacher favored me. If I joined the basketball team, Madison suddenly got injured and drew all the attention. If I had a boyfriend, Madison found a way to slip between us, pretending innocence while flashing me a triumphant look. It was as if my life was a stage and Madison couldn't bear not being in the spotlight. My father saw it. Often, he pulled me onto the porch beneath the rustling maples to speak privately. "You have your mother's spirit, Arabella," he said. "Never let someone else's jealousy snuff out your light." He carried those words like a charm. But I also knew that with each passing day, Madison's hunger for power grew stronger. And Evelyn never hid her intention to make her daughter the center of everything, including my father's legacy. I was too young to grasp it all then, but now I know. The seeds of the coming storm were planted in those very moments. The brass key in my hand and Madison's envious stare as it glimmered under the library lamp. I met Derek one June afternoon, sunlight streaming through the glass windows of a Denver art gallery. I was there for a fundraising auction for the local museum. While I stood before an abstract painting trying to unravel its layers, a deep voice sounded behind me. "Sometimes, art doesn't need explaining. You need to know it makes your heart beat a little faster." I turned and saw him. Derek Hayes. Tall, sharp in a fitted suit, his eyes alive with confidence. He smiled, part charm, part calculation. We began talking and I was surprised by how much he knew about contemporary art. I didn't realize then how much of his words were truth and how much was facade. That day, though, I felt as if I'd found a kindred spirit. He asked about my work. I answered honestly, "I'm building a small company specializing in logistics for artworks, transporting paintings, sculptures, making sure they're safe from galleries to museums." Derek nodded. "That's fascinating. You're not preserving art, you're preserving its soul." I believed he saw value in what I did when most, including Evelyn and Madison, dismissed it as trivial. Evelyn would half mock, "Well, she has her little wooden box shipping job. At least it keeps her busy." Madison would giggle, "My sister, always so serious about things no one notices." But Derek wasn't like that. At least not then. He listened closely, asked about temperature-controlled containers, insurance for multi-million-dollar works. My heart lifted, finally feeling understood. He was equally skilled at charming Evelyn and Madison. The first time I brought him home for dinner, he handed Evelyn a bouquet of white orchids, her favorite, though she rarely bought them. She glowed, instantly seeing him as a perfect gentleman. For Madison, he lavished praise, calling her a natural with style, even when she wore something simple. Madison blushed, her eyes sparkling, and from then on, I knew she had one more reason to resent me. So I overlooked it. Through my eyes back then, Derek was everything: smart, ambitious, seemingly devoted to me. We dated less than a year before he proposed. My father passed the year before Derek proposed, leaving a void nothing could fill. Evelyn was openly delighted, repeating that at last I had a man to stand behind me. Madison stayed beside me at the engagement party, smiling with her lips while her eyes gleamed cold. The wedding took place in a garden. I wore a flowing white dress, walking through the flower aisle to the sound of soft music. Derek held my hand tightly and whispered, "I'll make you happy." But the truth revealed itself slowly, piece by piece, not loud, not dramatic, but quietly, like an underground stream. In the first months, Derek still kept up the image of a sweet husband, bragging to friends about my smart wife who works in art logistics. But after we moved into the large house my father left behind, his tone began to change. One evening, I excitedly shared that my company had signed a contract to transport a collection of paintings from New York to Los Angeles, valued at more than $2 million. I thought he would be proud. But Derek raised an eyebrow, sipped his wine, and smirked. "Not bad, at least it keeps you busy. But you know, compared to the investment deals I'm handling, your contract is like a few cardboard boxes." That phrase, cardboard boxes, stabbed straight into my heart. This wasn't just work. It was what I had built with my own two hands. I swallowed the hurt, telling myself maybe he didn't mean it. But later he repeated it, more and more clearly. He began introducing me to his friends with half-joking, half-serious remarks. "This is Arabella, my wife. She keeps paintings from tearing during transport. Very important." Everyone laughed and I forced myself to smile while heat rushed to my face. As time passed, Derek increasingly saw me as a door to a treasure chest. He was more interested in my father's inheritance and the assets in my name than in my joys or sorrows. He constantly asked, "Have you withdrawn profits from your company yet? Can you move more into our joint account?" When I hesitated, he sighed, "I want us to live comfortably. I know you can do it." Evelyn praised Derek endlessly, calling him the steady man this family needs. Madison acted overly close, often calling him to ask for career advice. I noticed, but at the time I still trusted too much. I tried to cling to the illusion that Derek loved me, that his dismissiveness was a habit of an ambitious man. But deep inside I started to hear the cracking sounds, the silent fractures seeping into our marriage day by day. Madison was never good at any job. After graduating with a degree in public relations, she bounced from place to place. A small PR firm in Chicago, an ad agency in Dallas, then a fashion startup in Los Angeles. Everywhere the story was the same. Loud beginnings, then conflict, then quitting or being fired. I heard the excuses countless times through Evelyn, who always blamed others. "Oh, Madison is so talented, but her coworkers are jealous. Her boss is selfish, couldn't see her worth." After a while I stopped reacting. I thought if she were truly good, someone would have kept her. Then one evening I came home to find Evelyn sitting in the living room with Derek. The yellow lamp cast her familiar look of feigned worry. "Derek," she said, "you know Madison really needs an opportunity. She's tried many places, but no one has the patience to guide her. You have experience, a position. Can't you help her?" I remained by the doorway, each word sinking in. Derek folded his arms and nodded thoughtfully. "Madison has ambition, but she lacks direction. With the right guidance, she could make something of herself." Evelyn immediately smiled, glancing at me. "See, Arabella? Your husband understands. She needs a hand up. Our family must stand together, grow together." I was used to Evelyn manipulating every conversation. She didn't ask me, she made it sound like a duty I had to carry. At dinner, I cautiously said, "Madison should find her own path. If Derek wants to help, maybe give her advice." Derek set his glass down, his tone calm but pressing. "I can arrange a junior associate position for Madison at the investment firm. Just temporary. Nothing major." Evelyn's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. In my chest, unease spread. But to avoid another argument, I nodded. A few weeks later, Madison was by Derek's side at nearly all his events. From partner meetings to financial conferences, she dressed sharply, smiled perfectly, and was always introduced as, "This is Madison, my special associate." The first time I heard it was at a fundraising gala. I arrived late after handling a delayed shipment of antique paintings at the airport. Walking in, I saw Derek on stage with Madison. He spoke of a new vision in creative investment, crediting her as essential. The hall erupted in applause. I lingered in the back, my chest ice cold. Many eyes turned to me, not with respect but with whispers. "Arabella is just the wife. The real duo is Derek and Madison." Soon rumors spread fast in business circles. Derek and Madison were the golden pair. In sync, young, dynamic. I was pushed aside, an outsider in my own story. One night, I confronted Derek. "What exactly are you turning Madison into? A partner, an assistant, or more than that?" He leaned back on the sofa, loosened his tie, smirking. "You're too sensitive. Madison needed a chance, I gave her a job. So, you should support her, not doubt." I pressed. "You introduce her like I don't even exist. Do you know what people are saying?" Derek raised an eyebrow. "I don't care what people say. I care about results. Madison works efficiently, makes me look good. That's enough." His words cut deep. I realized he no longer saw me as a partner, only a shadow. The next day I overheard Evelyn and Madison in the kitchen. "You're doing so well, Madison. Everyone notices you. Derek needs someone like you beside him. Arabella, she's strong but she lacks finesse. She doesn't know how to make a man proud." Madison laughed, her voice sharp. "I'll make sure everyone sees it. She's not the powerful woman of this family, I am." My hands trembled at the doorway. After all these years, Madison hadn't changed. Only now her weapon wasn't childish tricks to ruin a painting. It was my husband and my family's reputation. More and more, Derek flaunted his closeness with Madison. He boasted of projects they brainstormed, of meetings I wasn't invited to. Madison never missed a chance to jab. Arabella's busy with her art shipments. I'm helping Derek close multi-million-dollar deals. Each word was a knife, but I never let them see me bleed. I quietly observed, collected, kept my face composed. Deep down I knew a hidden war was starting, and I couldn't afford to lose. One morning while checking my company inbox, I received a strange email. It had been mistakenly forwarded from an internal address at Derek's firm. The subject line read, "Final Investment Agreement, Grant Gallery." My breath caught. Grant Gallery was the art space my father had left behind, which I later renovated to display part of our family's collection. It wasn't just property, it was a living memory of him. Why was there an investment agreement about it? I opened the attachment. The words cut like knives. At the bottom, right above the line "Transfer ownership to Derek Hayes," was a signature. My signature. Perfect, precise, so flawless that if I hadn't known I never signed, I might have doubted myself. My face burned hot while my hands turned icy. My heartbeat thundered. They had crossed the final line. This wasn't only betrayal in love or humiliation in crowded halls. They were stealing my father's legacy, the very thing I had sworn to protect. That evening I tested Derek. He sat in his office, tie loosened, whiskey in hand. "I got a strange email," I began evenly. "Something about Grant Gallery." He didn't look up, smirking. "You're mistaken. Probably a system error. Don't worry. Something that big wouldn't go through you anyway." The words exposed his truth. In his eyes, I wasn't important enough to be informed, not worthy to be part of decisions. He never imagined I had seen that forged signature. In that moment I knew, if I spoke out, Derek and Madison would deny everything. They would paint me as paranoid, unstable. I had seen it before, how my mother was cornered without proof, her truth dismissed. I would not repeat her fate. I needed a plan. One not led by emotion but cold, meticulous. I named it Operation Phoenix, the phoenix rising from ashes. That night I sat alone in the library, the desk lamp casting light over my father's old papers. I turned the pages of his journals, filled with details of artworks, transactions, and small notes meant for me. In the corner of one page he had written, "Trust your eyes, Arabella, but always keep the evidence in your hand." It was as if my father had foreseen these very days. The first step of Operation Phoenix was to control information. I called my personal attorney, Clara Hughes, a former law school friend who later became one of the best financial litigators in Denver. "Clara," I said when she picked up, "I need your help. My forged signature appears in a transfer contract. I don't want to file a lawsuit yet, but I need you to quietly gather every piece of evidence." She wasn't surprised, only sighed. "Arabella, I've been waiting for this day. I'll do it quietly, but you need to be ready. They won't stop at one contract." After that call, I felt lighter, though a cold determination burned inside me. The next day I went to my company. Nina, my CEO, noticed something different in my face and asked, "What's wrong, Bella?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Nina, I trust you. I need you to help me protect every dollar in this company. Anyone connected to Derek or Madison, cut them out immediately. And start auditing every financial document." Nina's eyes lit up. "We're going to war, aren't we?" "Not because I want to. But they've already started." In the days that followed, I lived in two parallel worlds. By day I still smiled, attended events, and played the role of a calm wife. By night I turned the library into a war room. I printed every contract, highlighted every line, stored copies in multiple places. Every piece of evidence was guarded, with no room for mistakes. Once, Madison walked into the living room as I returned from a business trip. She sneered, "You look tired. Busy with crates and old paintings, huh? Derek told me he doesn't understand why you work yourself so hard for something so worthless." I looked straight into her eyes. "You should be careful. Some things that seem worthless actually hold the foundation." Madison faltered for a moment, then laughed like I'd told a joke. But in her eyes, a flicker of unease appeared. I knew I had planted a seed of doubt. While they continued flaunting their golden couple image, I quietly laid bricks for my plan. Every document copy, every bank receipt, every scanned photo of my real signature became a weapon. Operation Phoenix was growing, like a fire smoldering beneath ashes, waiting to ignite. I felt like the little girl again, clutching the brass key my father once gave me, knowing the responsibility was not only to guard the legacy, but to protect the truth. The charity auction night took place in a luxury downtown hotel. The grand hall glittered with crystal chandeliers, modern paintings displayed around the room for patrons to bid on. The air was thick with extravagance and polished smiles. I walked in with Derek, wearing a classic long black gown, elegant, understated. In my hand was a small clutch holding nothing but lipstick and a silver fountain pen, the only thing of my father's I always carried. Madison was already there, radiant in a striking red dress, lips painted to match, eyes sparkling with confidence. She quickly strode over, looping her arm through Derek's, then turned to the crowd, her voice dramatic and loud. "This is my sister Arabella. I'm sure you all know her, the lucky woman who inherited our father's massive fortune." Laughter rippled through the tables. I felt the weight of appraising stares from collectors and businessmen. Madison went on, her tone sweet but sharp-edged. "She's not really into business. Just lucky, right, sister?" Derek raising his wine glass, nodding with a smirk. "That's right. Without this family, Arabella would be nothing. Thanks to us, she has what she does today." The room echoed with small chuckles and nods of agreement. To them it was harmless banter, a playful toast. But I knew, it was a public humiliation. My hand tightened around the clutch. Inside, a storm raged, but my lips curved into a cold smile. I let them perform their play before the crowd because I knew, the sooner they reveled in arrogance, the sooner they would slip. An older collector leaned toward me, whispering, "You're not angry?" If it were me, I'd have walked out. I turned calmly, meeting his gaze. "What truly belongs to you doesn't need proving in one evening." He nodded, thoughtful. That night I stayed silent until we got home. Derek was too drunk and Madison was busy texting, gloating about her victory. I closed myself in the study, sat at the dark wooden desk and called Clara Hughes. The phone rang twice before her steady yet warm voice answered. "Arabella? You're still working at this hour?" I drew a deep breath. "Clara, I need to meet you now. Tonight they publicly humiliated me before hundreds. I can't wait anymore. It's time for Operation Phoenix to move to the next stage." A brief silence. Then her firm reply, "All right. Tell me when and where." We met at a late-night cafe, where two women in business suits tucked in a corner wouldn't draw attention. When I arrived, Clara was already there, her hair neatly tied back, eyes bright under the golden light. I set down my bag, pulling out a file I had prepared. The forged contract copies, my company's financial statements, photos of my father's art pieces. I pushed them toward her. Clara flipped each page, her expression grave. "This signature. It was made with advanced simulation software. But it won't fool me. Do you have the originals?" "I've kept both digital copies and proof I was elsewhere when it was signed." She nodded, pencil marking notes across the margins. "We'll need a handwriting expert. I know one formerly with the FBI. He can prove this forgery in court." My hand trembled slightly. "Clara, they don't just want money. They want to erase me from my father's legacy. Turn me into a parasite living off luck." Her eyes softened. "Arabella, I've known you since law school. You're not the type to wait for fate. They chose the wrong person to challenge." I breathed deeply, the weight in my chest easing. "So what's our next step?" Clara closed the file firmly, her voice steady. "We'll build a complete case, financial, legal, legacy. But more importantly, Arabella, you must keep pretending to be weak. Let them believe they've won. When their performance reaches its peak, we'll drop the curtain." I listened to the faint clink of spoons stirring coffee around us, the glow of streetlights casting moving shadows outside. In my mind, Madison in her red dress and Derek raising his glass replayed vividly. But this time I didn't feel pain. I felt a cold calm like a blade newly sharpened. "All right, Clara. Let them perform. I'll wait for the perfect moment to end the show." From that night at the cafe, I knew everything had shifted. It was no longer doubt or public jabs. It was war. And I needed every scrap of evidence, every smallest detail, to ensure that when the curtain fell, Derek and Madison would have no way out. Clara began by asking me to gather all records related to my art logistics company, the business I had poured more than 10 years into. I combed through every drawer, every file cabinet in the office. Dry documents, Business licenses, ownership certificates, shipping contracts, suddenly turned into weapons. I remembered my father's words, "Arabella, papers are steel walls. No one can break them if you keep them in your hands." I gave Clara the original of my father's will, the paper yellowed with age yet still clear. The entire art collection, the house, and the trusts were entrusted to me until my death or my choice to transfer. Not a single line mentioned Derek or Madison. When Clara finished reading, her lips curved slightly. "This will is your shield. If they dare forge another contract, we can destroy it in one hearing." But I knew Derek wasn't foolish enough to rely only on forgeries. He was ambitious and calculating. Clara advised me to hire an independent auditor, someone with no ties to Derek. I agreed immediately. 3 weeks later, I met Wallace, a renowned auditor, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, once employed by major corporations before retiring to take private projects. He held a thick file, his voice calm but heavy. "Arabella, I've completed the review. And the findings are quite serious." My heart pounded as he turned to the first page. "Here is the spending report for the past 3 years. Numerous withdrawals from the operating fund lack matching records. In total, nearly $400,000. I traced the flow and most of it was transferred into Mr. Derek Hayes's personal account, disguised as consulting fees." I bit down hard on my lip, my hand gripping the arm of the chair. "Are you sure? Do you have solid proof?" Wallace nodded, sliding the detailed printout toward me. Dates, times, account numbers, amounts. Everything was plain to see. You can see here he fabricated invoices for consulting services that never existed. I've kept all originals and the bank statements. In court, no one can deny this. I closed my eyes, caught between fury and relief. Fury because my own husband had siphoned money from the company I built. Relief because finally I had a sharp arrow aimed directly at him. Wallace flipped to the final section. "And here the company credit card spending." I noticed a secondary account issued under the name M. Carter. Does that ring a bell? I froze. Madison Carter, her birth name. Wallace continued, voice steady. "This card has been used consistently for the past 2 years. Purchases at luxury boutiques in New York, 5-star hotel bills in Miami, even a jewelry order worth more than $50,000 in Beverly Hills. All charged as business entertainment expenses under your company." A bitter laugh broke from my throat, jagged and raw. Was she really that stupid? Using a company card in my name to feed her habits? Wallace shrugged. Maybe she thought no one would check. Or that Derek would cover for her. But I've backed up every invoice with attached store surveillance footage. Hard to deny. I sat silent for a few seconds, staring at the stack of files. Each page reflected their true faces back at me like shards of glass. Clara arrived that afternoon, and when she heard Wallace's report, she smiled coldly. "Good. This is exactly what we need. Once I present this in court, it's no longer about betrayal in marriage. It's embezzlement and corporate asset abuse. They won't only lose their reputation, they could face criminal charges." I looked out the window where the fading sun stretched across my father's garden. Derek and Madison thought I was their puppet. They didn't realize every string was already winding back, binding them instead. That night, I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Operation Phoenix, Phase 2. Each piece of evidence, each scan of my real signature, each invoice tied to Madison, I saved and organized like chapters in a book meant to be read in court. As I typed, laughter drifted from the living room. Madison's shrill voice carried, "Derek, do you think she suspects anything?" I swear she looked different. Derek scoffed, "Don't worry. Arabella's always lost in her little world of paintings. She'll never see past a picture frame. Soon it'll all be ours." I closed my eyes, my fingers still moving across the keyboard. A cold smile tugged at my lips. They didn't know that in their most arrogant moment, I already had everything in my grasp. And when Operation Phoenix was complete, one spark would bring down the entire castle they'd built on sand. That night, after stacking all the files from Wallace and Clara, I sat alone in the library. The room still smelled of oak and old books, as if my father's breath lingered there. On the high shelves rested his brown leather journals, treasures I had cherished since childhood. He wrote everything: how he tended the garden, details of art pieces, even rare reflections about my future. I pulled one down, dust rising off the cover, stinging my eyes. Page after page showed his steady handwriting. Mostly notes on art collectors' names. Some I recognized, some long gone from the art world. But at the back of one journal, a folded sheet slipped out. I opened it. A legal memorandum stamped with the words, Phoenix Trust, Confidential. My heart stopped. Phoenix. That word wasn't a coincidence. My father had chosen the same name I later gave my plan, as if he had left me a message from the past. I read slowly. Through an agreement with International Art Logistics, 15% of shares are held in trust. Sole legal heir, Arabella G. Hayes. I gripped the paper, my hand trembling. International Art Logistics wasn't small. It was a global art transport corporation handling multi-million-dollar contracts for major museums and auction houses in New York, London, Paris. Shares in that company weren't just an investment, they were an empire. I whispered as if speaking to my father, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Then I understood. He hadn't trusted Evelyn and even less Madison. Hiding the shares and recording them only in his journals was the only way to ensure they'd reach me untouched. I immediately called Clara. "Clara, I just found my father's hidden trust. Phoenix Trust. It holds shares in International Art Logistics. And my name is on it." On the other end, I heard her pen drop against the desk. "Arabella, are you sure? I'm holding the original memorandum. My father's signature, notarized seal, all here. Clara, this isn't a few $100,000. This is tens of millions." A soft laugh of astonishment came through. "By God. Arabella, this is the trump card. They have no idea this trust exists. If you reveal it, Derek and Madison vanish from the picture. But until that day, keep it sealed. If they get even a hint, they'll burn everything to stop you." I folded the paper and placed it in my personal safe, the same one my father gave me the key for as a child. That key still hung from the chain I wore every day. The next day, I met Wallace in his small office to confirm. After reviewing the documents, his eyes glinted behind silver frames. "These shares are currently worth at least $30 million, Arabella. They don't appear in public listings because they're shadow shares, but fully legal. If needed, I'll bring in an international auditing firm to certify the value." I sank into the chair, overwhelmed yet relieved. 4 weeks, I had prepared Operation Phoenix, believing proof of embezzlement and corporate card abuse would be enough to topple Derek and Madison. But now I had a mountain of gold standing behind me. Wallace said quietly, "The name Phoenix, your father didn't choose it by chance. Maybe he knew one day his daughter would need it to rise again." Memories washed over me. My father sitting me on his lap, showing me new paintings, teaching me to see value not just with my eyes but with my heart. He never promised life would be easy. He only promised, "You'll never fall if you hold on to what's yours." That promise had never felt more alive. That evening, I returned home. Derek and Madison sat in the living room, chattering about an upcoming event in New York. Madison looked at me, smirking, "You're back?" Derek and I were discussing opening a new gallery. We might call it the Madison Hayes Gallery. Sounds more sophisticated, don't you think? I watched their performance. My chest no longer twisted. They thought they were on the verge of owning everything, but they didn't know. It was all sand beneath their feet. I smiled faintly. Sounds interesting. But don't forget, not everyone has the foundation to stand firm in the art world. Madison arched an eyebrow, ready to retort, but Derek cut in, hand on her shoulder, grinning with confidence. "Don't worry, Arabella. We know what we're doing. Sometimes the one holding the key isn't the one holding destiny." I turned, climbing the stairs, whispering inwardly, "The key? Derek, you have no idea. I hold the entire gate." 3 days after the auction, Derek and Madison grew busier than ever, meeting their lawyer, whispering behind closed doors, emerging with victorious grins as if the game was already won. To them, I had lost. I was just the weary wife, head bowed, locked in my study all day. Madison even peeked in sometimes, flashing a triumphant smile. "Packing already? I think that's wise. The sooner you accept, the less it'll hurt." I returned a weak smile, silent. In truth, I was packing, organizing binders of evidence, preparing for the 72-hour mark. I let them believe I had broken. Derek didn't miss his chance either. At dinner, he set down his glass, his tone low and commanding. Arabella, I've finalized the papers. The day after tomorrow you'll sign. That's the only way to save face. Afterward, we'll leave town for a while to avoid scrutiny. Madison giggled, adding, and don't worry. I'll manage everything for you. You just need to rest. I lifted my eyes, letting them glisten slightly, feigning despair. I nodded softly, if that's what you want. At that moment, Derek glanced at Madison, his lips curling, his eyes shining with triumph. They believed I had surrendered. But with every second my certainty grew stronger. Clara had timed everything. And when the moment arrived, the curtain would fall. That morning, sunlight streamed through the window, bright, serene, almost mocking. I brewed tea, sat in the library flipping one of my father's journals as if in routine, though my ears caught every sound in the house. Derek and Madison were still in the living room, their voices buzzing with excitement. Madison laughed aloud. I still can't believe Arabella's actually signing. After all these years, I'll finally have what should have been mine from the start. Derek's voice rumbled, don't get cocky yet. Wait until she signs. But yes, money, the gallery, the reputation. It'll all be ours. Then came the knock. 3 firm, heavy raps. I set down my teacup, my heartbeat steady. Derek frowned and opened the door. On the porch waited a man in a gray suit, clutching a thick folder. Beside him, a court officer with a visible badge. Mr. Derek Hayes. The man's voice was sharp. Derek nodded impatiently. That's me. What is this about? The man handed him the folder, voice slicing like a blade. You are being sued for embezzlement and corporate asset abuse. This is an official summons. The air in the living room collapsed like all oxygen sucked out. Derek's hands shook as he opened the file. Madison rushed to his side, but before she could speak, the officer turned to her. Madison Carter? You are charged with forgery and corporate asset abuse. Here is your summons. Chaos erupted. Madison shrieked. What? This is a mistake. I never. The man cut her off. We have transaction records, forged signatures, and credit card statements tied to Arabella Logistics. You'll have the chance to explain in court. Derek's face flushed, crushing the paper in his fist. This is impossible. Who did this? This is a trap. I stepped calmly from the library. Both of them whipped their heads toward me, panic blazing in their eyes. I shrugged lightly, my voice cool as air. Maybe, not everyone is as easy to fool as you thought, Derek. Madison trembled, stumbling forward, her voice cracking. What did you do? Did you call the police? Did you set us up? I didn't answer. Instead, I fixed my gaze on Derek. His chest heaved, his fist white around the papers. You once told me I was nothing without this family, I whispered. Maybe it's time you ask yourself, without me, what are you? The court officer placed another envelope on the table. You have 30 days to prepare your case. If you fail to comply, we will enforce the order. Then they left, silence rushing in behind them. Madison collapsed into a chair, pale as ash. No. This can't be. I was just getting started. I can't lose everything now. Derek spun toward me, eyes blazing with hatred. Arabella, you'll regret this. I'll strike back. I have lawyers, I have connections. I cut him off, my voice calm. You have lawyers. I have evidence. Let's see whose side the court values more. I turned and walked up the stairs, leaving behind Derek's desperate curses and Madison's choked sobs. Each step on the wooden staircase sounded like the drumbeat of a victory march. That afternoon, Claire called me back to the library, the very room where Derek and Madison once signed papers with their lawyer, thinking they had ended me. The space was unchanged, towering shelves, a gleaming wooden table, my father's portrait on the wall, his eyes seeming to follow every movement. Derek sat slumped in a chair, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Madison stood behind him, clutching her purse, her pale face still trying to look proud. Evelyn, my stepmother, paced the floor, her heels striking hard against the wood, muttering as if preparing a long speech. Clara dropped a thick folder onto the table with a sharp thud. She sat, opening page after page with composure. I locking my eyes on Derek and Madison. I think, I began, my voice steady but clear, you've forgotten one thing. Nothing in this house, nothing in this company has ever been in Derek's name. Not for a single day. Every asset belongs to me, Arabella Hayes, under my father's will and the law. Derek shot up, slamming his hand on the table. No. I've run this for years. I had authority in every decision. It can't all belong to you. Clara lifted her head, eyes sharp as blades. Mr. Hayes, you didn't run it. You embezzled. Here's proof from an independent audit. $400,000 withdrawn from company funds into your personal account. Do you want to deny it? Derek's mouth opened but no words came out. Madison trembled, clutching his hand. And you? I turned to Madison. I have every company credit card receipt for your shopping sprees, your luxury vacations. The forged contract with my signature. Your fingerprints all over it. Do you want to deny that? Mascara streaked down her cheeks as she sobbed. I didn't mean to. I only wanted a chance. You always had father's favor, you had everything. I had nothing. I felt nothing. Her tears had no power over me anymore. Evelyn lunged forward, her voice shrill like a blade. Arabella, you're cruel. They wanted a small piece. Why couldn't you be generous? Without me and Madison, you would have been a lost child after your mother died. We gave you a family. I clenched my fist, but my eyes stayed calm. Family? You call this a family? A family where your daughter humiliated me, where my husband conspired with my stepsister to rob my father's legacy? If that's family, I'd rather stand alone. Derek roared like a drowning man. I gave you everything. Without me, you were a keeper of dusty paintings. I brought you into society, I introduced you to partners, I cut him cold, my voice steel. You brought me into society? Derek, you forget. It was my logistics company that paid for the parties, the trips, the car you drive every day. Every bill was covered by my company. I didn't live off you. You lived off me. Madison sobbed harder. Evelyn wrapped her arms around her, shaking her head. Derek's pale face finally collapsed into the chair, his hands clutching his head. Clara rose, her voice ringing like a gavel. You can scream, cry, but the law won't cry with you. I've filed the case. The court will decide. And with this evidence, Derek Hayes and Madison Carter will lose their standing in both finance and art. Evelyn shrieked, eyes blazing. Arabella, you'll regret this. You're destroying this family. I looked at her, my voice slow and resolute. No. I'm not destroying anything. I'm reclaiming what was mine. My father entrusted it to me. And I will protect it to the end. My father's portrait seemed to watch silently, as if his hand rested on my shoulder, whispering, You did right. I turned and walked out of the library, leaving behind the wails, accusations, and collapse they could no longer escape. Each step echoed heavy but freeing. When the verdict came, none of them dared lift their heads. Outside the courthouse, Derek frantically dialed number after number. Within minutes, I heard rejections spill through the speakerphone. Sorry, we can't continue working with you. Our reputation can't be tied to this scandal. His arms dropped. The once proud face was wrinkled and broken. He rushed out, but every step was heavy, nothing like the ambitious man who once walked into my life at an art exhibit. Weeks later, headlines blared. Businessman Derek Hayes ousted after embezzlement scandal. Magazines that once praised him now branded him an opportunist, a traitor. On television, I saw him disheveled, stumbling out of a small law office in the suburbs. The man who once beside me at grand galas was now only a shadow, tainted with fraud, avoided by all. Madison fared no better. She vanished briefly, then reappeared at a small gathering. No glittering gowns, no dazzling jewels. Just a worn dress, hastily tied hair. Yet whispers hissed around her. Isn't that Madison Carter? The one who forged her sister's signature. Shameful. Thought she was a society princess. She turned away, eyes brimming. I watched from a distance, neither gloating nor pitying. She sowed, now she reaped. Evelyn held her close, guiding her away, but her posture carried no pride. Evelyn, once the darling of teas and fundraisers, now faced whispers at every step. Invitations stopped coming. At events, people turned their backs. An old friend told me bluntly, Evelyn spoiled her daughter so much she dragged the whole family down. No one respects her anymore. Once I saw her at the grocery store. She wore a heavy coat, dark glasses hiding her face, hands trembling on the cart. When she spotted me, she froze, lips pressed tight. Madison walked beside her, head bowed, quickening her pace. For the first time I didn't feel threatened. I saw only two women who once thought they ruled everything, now moving like shadows. Derek tried to reach me a few times. One evening a message lit my phone. "Arabella, please. Give me a chance to talk. I've lost everything. Only you remain." I read it twice, then deleted it. There was nothing left to say. The love and trust one once gave him had been turned to ashes long ago. Meanwhile, my art logistics company thrived. In every legal step, Wallace strengthened our financial records, and loyal EMP Clara stood by. Meloise returned after the truth came out. We didn't survive. We expanded into international contracts my father once dreamed of. One morning I paused at my office window, sunlight glinting off skyscrapers. An email arrived. A prestigious New York museum wanted us to transport a new collection worth hundreds of millions. I smiled, this time a real smile, free of bitterness, free of masks. Back at my desk I saw my father's old journal. I flipped to the last page where he wrote of the Phoenix Trust. His words echoed, "Trust your path. One day you'll stand without anyone holding you up." I touched the ink softly, whispering, "You were right, Father." As for Derek, Madison, and Evelyn, they lost everything. Not only wealth and status, but society's trust. And I, after years of being dismissed, finally reclaimed the most important thing: the right to stand tall in my own life. That March, as spring touched New York, I stood before reporters, friends, and partners to announce the Lilly Foundation, named after my mother. Not everyone in the hall knew the story behind it, but for me it was the only way to keep her alive. I wore a jade green dress, simple yet solemn. Around my neck hung the familiar chain, the old safe key gleaming under the lights. Cameras flashed, whispers filled the room, but I focused only on my words. The Lilly Foundation will support young women artists seeking a chance. My mother, Lily Hayes, was a gifted painter who never had the opportunity to show her art. I want to ensure no dream is buried for lack of support. Tears shimmered in some eyes. A young student asked, "Mrs. Arabella, why now?" I smiled, remembering my journey, because I know what it means to lose and to reclaim. When a woman finds her place, the greatest gift isn't power or fame. It's the chance to open the path for others. Afterward, I returned to my private gallery where my mother's painting hung, white lilies glowing under radiant light as if heaven embraced them. I stood for hours, tracing her brushstrokes, almost hearing her breath. Clara entered, setting down a champagne glass. "Arabella, today you did what few can, turned pain into strength, memory into legacy." I touched the chain at my neck, the cold metal grounding me. "Clara, there were days I thought I'd never escape Derek, Evelyn, Madison. But now I see myself far beyond them. Not above, on a path they could never understand." Clara nodded, eyes glowing with conviction. "They fought to take. You chose to build. That's the difference." At the Lilly Foundation's exhibition opening, young women displayed their work. One girl with short curls trembled as she introduced her sculpture. "Without this foundation I'd never have applied." "Thank you." I held her hand firmly. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself, for believing you're worthy." As the gallery lights dimmed, only my mother's painting glowed at the center. I stepped forward, standing tall, the key around my neck shining. The crowd fell silent, eyes fixed on me. A woman facing her mother's legacy, her face lit with resolve. I did not seize, I created. I did not destroy, I continued. And this legacy will never be stolen again. In the end, what carried me forward wasn't revenge, but the sacred duty to protect my mother's memory, my father's trust, and the women carving their own place. Each listener may draw something different from this story. Some see justice, some see memory's power, some find faith that anyone dismissed can rewrite their fate. What about you? In my place, when everything seemed lost, would you fight to the end, or walk away to begin anew? I'd love to hear your thoughts after this journey. And if Arabella's story touched you in any way, follow this channel to discover more journeys. Stories of family, faith, betrayal, and rebirth. Each tale is a slice of life, sometimes painful, yet always strong enough to stir hearts and kindle hope. Stay with us so you won't miss the next story, where every family hides secrets and each person fights a silent battle to protect what they hold most dear.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.